What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be making some batarangs, and I've already made a bunch. I haven't even filmed or made anything for this video yet. This is the first clip, and these are all older. I made these a few years back. This one, for example, is one-sided and had Velcro and just kind of attached to my utility belt. This one is based off of more of the Bruce Timm animated series Batman, and the other two are just kind of my own whatever weird thing. But I got a fifth one here, which is based on the Zack Snyder Batman vs. Superman Batarang, and it's probably my favorite, and mostly just because I can throw it and it hits the target. And I'm going to try to show you what I mean here. I've even tried weighting these, putting pennies in the end in between the foam, pennies in the center. None of them fly straight. And that's fine if it's just a cosplay prop. However, if you're going to be doing like a low-budget fan film or something like that, you may need something to actually work on camera. And this design isn't all that great. I don't have a lot of space here, but I'm going to try to throw this in my kitchen and show you guys just how poorly these work. You see halfway through it loses speed, it starts to flip and flop. It doesn't spin straight to the target. That one's probably the worst design as far as functionality out of all these, but none of these are very good. Like, that's crap. Okay, but I got this Snyder one here that I have in its little holster. If I can get it out. Alright, success. I actually got it out of the holster. Sorry about that black screen there. But this one actually works pretty good. Whenever I throw that, it spins, it goes straight, it hits every single time. Now, aside from the basic shape difference, there's one other main difference with this I noticed in the design of it when I was looking at the actual in-movie prop, which is that when you look at it from the side, it's thinner at the top and thicker at the bottom. I think both the shape and the extra weight on the bottom causes it to be more like a knife blade, where you have an edge on one side and a flat heavy back on the other. I'm not sure 100% that's it, but this one, every single time, like, goes where I throw it, and doesn't look too bad whenever I throw it. So I'm going to make a couple different designs for this video, but I want to emphasize that this design flies really well every single time. The pattern section of it here, what I do is I simply fold a piece of paper in half. I draw out half the pattern and cut it out with some scissors, and then whenever I'm done, I have the full pattern. Okay, I took both patterns and I traced out two of each. And I traced these out onto some 5mm EVA craft foam. This is $1.27 plus tax a sheet here in the US. And picked this up at Hobby Lobby. And next what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this out. And you'll notice here that there are some arrows. And these arrows are my own personal reminders, okay? Because the arrows are pointing to the areas of the batarang where I'm going to make straight cuts. What I mean by this is, whenever I hold the X-Acto knife, it will be straight up and down as I cut out this entire area on the top here, okay? Now once I get back over to these sides, they're going to have an angle because they're replicating a sharp edge like a knife. So instead of holding the X-Acto knife straight, I'm going to be cutting at an angle to produce a beveled edge. I'll still be following this line, but it's going to create this excess angle of foam that should look pretty cool. And the line on this is going to run all the way around here. And from there, I'm going to go back to the straight cut. And I'll do that on both these pieces. And similar over here, the only place on this that's going to be a straight cut is right here in the center. And all the edges are going to be cut at an angle. Okay, so a quick pointer here. I took all these pieces and I cut them apart before I actually cut them with the X-Acto knife. And this will make it much more manageable, especially if you're broke like me and only have a small cutting mat or cutting board to do all this stuff on. So you can see here the angle that is put on the foam from doing that angled cut. Okay, so these I'm not really doing much with at this point. So now that these two pieces are cut out, I'm just going to chuck them off to the side for now. But these two, however, for the BVS Snyder rangs, I took and scored the foam with an X-Acto knife and cut the lines in it like it has in the film. And I cut about, probably about 2 millimeters into the 5 millimeter foam. And now, what I'm going to do is take my Drill Master heat gun, and on the high setting, so whenever you heat the foam, the lines that I scored into it open up a little bit more. And go ahead and repeat that with the second one. Alright, so next step here is the insert. And I put an insert much like in the one I showed in the opening. I took some 2 millimeter UVA craft foam and I cut out just basically the bottom half of this, and I did this for each one. And I'm going to glue this in slightly offset so it's hanging down. I'll show you what that looks like just as soon as I do it. And to do that, I'm going to use contact cement. Alright, I have the one side of both of these glued, and to show you what I was talking about, this just sticks out a little bit more of the edge, and this is so I can sand and sharpen and even these two out together on each side so that I have a nice point whenever I'm done. And also, like I say, to make it wider at the bottom, so I don't know why whatever did the other one, I'm sure made it fly straighter. And next, now that I've done both of these, I am going to glue these other sides on and similarly match them up. Alright, I've used contact cement and glued this together so both sides are offset. And if you're at this stage, you notice some of your things don't 100% line up, don't worry about it. I'm going to sand this, and whenever I am done sanding it, it's going to even out everything, and then I'm going to use some silicone to seal it and take out some of the seams up top here. And after that, we will Mod Podge it and paint it. Okay, so I have my safety goggles and respirator on, and I'm going to begin to sand this down. And to do that, I'm going to use a Dremel rotary tool. Now you don't have to have this. You can just do this, sanding it by hand, and get the same effect. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to deepen this angle and blend these pieces together into a point on both sides, okay? Okay, so you can see here the difference of this side, obviously, versus this side. I have deepened the angle and started to blend these two together. Now this of course isn't by any means finished, I just wanted to show you an example. So I'm going to go through and do this on both sides and even this out as much as I can. Make it look much more like an actual knife edge over here, as opposed to what it looks like here. And I will also blend and sand these, and I will flatten out and even out all the top stuff here. Alright, so I finished both sides of this, and it was about 45 minutes of work total with the Dremel. Hand sanding, that could translate into a couple hours, realistically. And the hardest part of both of these was actually not these edges here, but the top. Getting this flat and even and symmetrical is actually a little tasking, but I got it done. And I'm still going to do a little hand sanding to smooth out some of the rest of this. And on this one over here, I deepened the grooves on the sides pretty excessively. This is based off of, I believe the drawing was by Jim Lee, or at least it looks like his style of Batman. And the actual batarang, it came up pretty high, but I didn't want to do it too high and make this too thin and flimsy and awkward. So I did it like I did, and I think it came out looking pretty cool. Next, I'm going to take some 600 grit sandpaper and hand sand these, both of them. And once that's done, I'll run a heat gun over them to help seal them the rest of the way. Alright, hand sanding is done, so I'm going to go ahead and use the heat gun to seal these up. Alright, so in order to seal up these edges here, I am going to use some acrylic latex with silicone. And if you watch my videos, I use this all the time, so I'm certain you're not shocked by this in the slightest. But the name brand is DAP. It's an all-purpose acrylic latex caulk with silicone, like I just said, but the brand is called Alex, or DAP, and the specific product is called Alex Plus. And this goes into a caulking gun. As you can see, I cut the bottom of this off. I ended up using it as a flash suppressor on a Nerf gun. It has nothing to do with this project, of course. But yeah, it comes in a caulking tube, and I always put mine into a Tupperware so I can just spread it on with my finger. And then I also have a secondary Tupperware that I just put plain old tap water in. Of course, I'm not going to use this for food again after this point, obviously, but yeah. And what I do is I just take some of the silicone and I put it on my finger, and then I'm going to rub that along any edge or any seam that I want to seal, and I will then use the water to smooth it out. Okay, so I've got that on there as thin and evenly as possible. And now I'm going to use the water . And there we go. I'm going to go ahead and repeat this process throughout both batarangs on all the seams and all the edges until they're nice and smooth and even. Alright, I have the siliconing all done here on both pieces. And this is about an hour's worth of work over about a 4-hour period, just because I don't do the whole thing at once. I do, a section here and a section in the center and a section on the end. Just do a little bit at a time to ensure that I don't end up smudging or fingerprinting anything that I just did. And also did this one as well. This is the last thing I just finished, and that is now waiting to dry. You can see it's glistening and shiny and still a little bit wet. And I usually give this at least 6 hours of dry time, especially on the areas like the top here where it is a little bit thicker. You want it to dry thoroughly before you go through and sand it to get the final smoothness and everything worked out. Alright, now that I'm pretty much done with the hand sanding portion of this, and I've gotten any little areas that are a little wavy or whatever sanded out of this, and to get that I used just some random pieces of 300 grit sandpaper that I had laying around. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Mod Podge and a brush, and I'm going to use the Mod Podge to seal the batarang before I paint it. And for this top section, I'm just going to put one quick thin layer. But for the sides here, I'm actually going to take it and apply it this way. And when you let the Mod Podge sit for a few seconds, it'll start to get a little bit tacky. And whenever this happens, I can then go back through and brush over the Mod Podge that is a little bit tacky, and what that'll do is it'll put some texture of the brush bristles into the Mod Podge itself, and what that will do is give us some physical texturing and lines going this way to make it almost look like it is metal that has been sharpened versus just a piece of foam that you sealed with, say, Mod Podge or Plastidip or whatever. It'll help give it a little bit more life. Alright. So I finished the sealing on this. Now you'll notice on this edge here, I didn't go up and down on the edge. I went this way, just so this one's different. And this one, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it on camera in the lights. You can kind of see the texture. It should show up better whenever I paint it. Which brings us to the next section, which is going to be painting. Set up to paint, and I have loaded up my airbrush with some Cratex opaque black, and I always mix this with a little bit of 40-30 balancing agent, which is just a mix additive that is polyurethane, well, acrylic polyurethane based. Okay, I also thin out pretty considerably my airbrush paint as well. And this is so I can do a few thin coats versus one thick coat. Part of that is just to avoid my own human error. So that's a little piece of advice. If using an airbrush and you're not used to it, just thin out your colors and do a few thin coats. They do dry pretty rapidly, and you can always add some Windex or isopropyl rubbing alcohol, a small amount, to help it to evaporate more quickly and dry more quickly. I'm going to go ahead and paint this other one, let them dry, flip them over, paint them again with as many coats as I feel that I need until it has a look and appearance that I like. Alright, so now that I painted them both black, I'm going to move on to the finishing. And I took some blue airbrush paint and I thinned it out to the point that it's pretty opaque. And it's gradually layered it on from the outside in. And this is to give it a more cartoonish or comic book look, since this idea came straight out of a, comic book panel. I'm not trying to make it look realistic. So that's pretty much it for that one. And you'll notice I leveled this surface. I had it angled in the last clip, but as I was painting, everything kept sliding down. I feel like I got a better angle for you guys to see, but yeah, had to level it out. And I'm going to use some clear acrylic gloss coat to seal this all in and help it to last a little bit longer. Just a few thin sprays will give it a nice, even, balanced coat. And you don't have to use this brand. You don't even really have to necessarily clear coat it. I just like to do it because it gives it a nice, dry, firm feel whenever it is fully dried. Alright, for the BVS Batarang here, I'm going to be using some silver metallic craft paint. You pick this up at pretty much any craft store or anything similar. And I'm going to take this and a paintbrush, and I am just going to start brushing all down this angle here, like that. And this craft paint takes about a half hour to an hour to dry, depending on how thick you put the coat on. I'm going to have to do several layers like that, obviously, to get it built up to look nice. Right after a few coats with the silver, it has the look and texture that I'm looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and, just like the other one, I'm going to use some clear acrylic coating. It's a nice, then even coat. I'll let that dry and then flip it over and do the other side. Alright, now that these have been clear coated and dried, they came out looking pretty good. I'm really happy with them. Didn't have any bugs or anything land on them while the clear coat was setting and drying, so they do all look pretty good. And yeah, that pretty much wraps it up for this video. I hope you guys found this video entertaining, maybe gave you some ideas for your own projects, and as always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.